All right, to return now to the Zohar concerning forgetfulness and memory. In other words, what is the dynamic process that goes on, which is revealed in this little section of Genesis. And the Zohar continues, Al-Kain hamakom shehaya bo shikha. In other words, when we suddenly forget something that happened, we experienced something, and then we try to remember names, places, dates, or whatever. Suddenly there's a blank. Does it mean that it doesn't exist? It's been wiped out like in a computer? We know that in spirituality or anything of a metaphysical nature, never disappears. Never. Once it's been recorded on a metaphysical level, and what is information that's registered in the mind, it's certainly not physical. If you write it down on a piece of paper can be destroyed, while the letters won't be destroyed, and the energy of that is contained in those letters. But still, we'd have no access to where we can refer back to something that no longer exists. But in the mind, there is no such thing. The proof of which is that at a later date, we suddenly remember the information. So something happened, that there was a period of a lapse of what is known as a lapse of memory. Why does that occur? Now, this has been investigated and over investigated, and still there is no conclusion as to why and what happened that causes shikha, forgetfulness. Because there is an energy intelligence, says the Zohar, called shikha. It is not like forgetfulness is the aspect of or the absence of remembering. That's one way to interpret it, right? In other words, when you haven't got that information, we call that you forgot. You forgot. Does it mean the information is not there? No, in fact, we have to assume that the information is not there. Is there. It's present. Then why don't we remember? Says the Zohar, because shikha is a force. What is the energy intelligence of that force that creates a condition and a situation where suddenly we don't remember? Hamakom shehaya bo shikha kam kenegdo. Ma katuv v'lo zachar sar amashkim et Yosef vayashkecheu. And it says, vayishkacheu, in verse 23 of chapter 40, it says, the Sar Mashkim did not remember Joseph, and he forgot him. And the Zohar raises a question, Umaksheh, lama lo lama vayishkacheu. It says that he didn't remember. The wine steward did not remember Joseph interpreting the dream and telling him that he would again be restored as Pharaoh's chief wine steward. If you don't remember, you forget. Isn't it a repetition of the same idea? Okay? What?
Probably not.
In other words, there is something deeply hidden within this coded verse that is not obvious. But that is the question that the Zohar raises. Umeshiv. Vayashkecheu mora ala makom sheyesh bo shikha. V'zehu shenikra ketz shel tzad hachoshech. In other words, the Torah is revealing us the secret of what is called forgetting and what is called remembering. What is memory and what is lapse of memory. That there is a part of that darkness that can blank out, can create an illusion, so to speak. Create an illusion like you get a blank screen, right? The computer doesn't want to give out the information. It's in the hard disk, and you get a blank screen, right? What kind of a screen do you get? A white screen? Or do you get a dark screen? In fact, the words make the white. The screen is dark. By and within its own nature, it's dark. So he says, the Zohar, that this aspect of forgetting is not the fact that the memory is not working. No, there is a force called Choshech, and it's referred to as Ketz. Ketz means end. What does end indicate? Wherever it says the word Miketz, like in the second word of this portion of the week, it says Vahi Miketz, and it was at the end of the 2 years, of the days, which we still do not understand. 2 years doesn't mean days. It could mean 700 or 820 or 30 days, but 2 years means 2 years, which would be sufficient. So the Zohar says there is a force which is known by its code name Ketz, that causes this force, this remembering, this energy force, this storage, this bank of memory, to become for the moment an illusionary blank. How do we know that, says the Zohar? Because it says, V'lo zachar sara mashkim et Yosef. The wine steward did not remember. It doesn't mean he didn't remember. The force of zechira, the energy force of remembering, was not there. Do you know why it wasn't there? Because a force called shikha, forgetfulness, a force that is a dark part of the dark force that creates an illusion as if it's not there. This is what happens when we want to tie a package and we're looking for the string, right? And we don't see the string, and we look all over the house for the string. And where is the string? Right next to the package. How is that possible? What? Oh, sometimes it's even in your... Yes, that's true. Sometimes it's even in your hand. How does that happen? Are we stupid? Certainly not. I mean, we won't even admit to that. So what other answer can we give? That suddenly comes an aspect of force. It's an illusionary, it's a temporary force, but nevertheless an active force in the world of illusion. Therefore, certain magicians can make things disappear. Now we know the things didn't move. Certainly he couldn't have moved the 747 Boeing jet in front of 10,000 people and make it appear as if it disappeared. And everyone could have sworn that it did disappear from their very eyes, 10,000 people. This happened recently. Or the Statue of Liberty disappeared before the eyes of people. What that magician is doing, what he doesn't know or doesn't realize what he was actually doing. He thinks he was doing something else. But that something else that he attributes this creation of an illusion for 10,000 people is that he has the force and the knowledge and the know-how to activate that realm of shikha, that force of shikha which is in each and every single one of us, to activate it at that moment, and we see blank, as if nothing exists. It's the force called illusion, a force that is governed by Ketz, which means end. What does end mean? It is not infinite. End means finite. That's why in its coded form, this week's portion is known as Ketz. It is known as end. What do you mean end? That all of that it was taking place here was in the realm of the illusion. And that was the mistake that Joseph had. Now someone might ask, wouldn't Joseph know if this was illusion or not? How could he have made the mistake? Someone raised this question afterwards. He's still a chariot. And does that mean he was governed by the illusion? It's impossible. We just answered that once he had passed over the hurdle of the incident with the wife of Potiphar, he emerged and arose to another level of consciousness called Yesod. In that level of consciousness, there is no aspect of illusion. So how could he have made that mistake? The answer is he didn't make a mistake. Because again, we are falling into that trap that he was 2 years too early, right? Because didn't it work out that he was taken out anyway? So don't think for a moment that he was suffering those 2 years extra because he was disappointed in the lapse of memory of the wine steward. The answer is don't fall back into the trap. If we have established that Joseph was a chariot, that Joseph was not maintaining his life, but that life was maintaining him, so he was already out of the dungeon, out of the jail before he got into the jail. What he was doing is watching the movie of Joseph, the physical one, going through these periods of ups and downs. But the real Joseph, meaning the one who was sitting and watching the movie because he knew this was part of the cosmic structure. The Jew ultimately, says the Zohar, was destined to go down into Egypt for his incarnation tikkun. He was the same Jew that was in the generation of the deluge, the flood. He was the same Jew that was in the Tower of Babel incident and still didn't learn his lesson. And therefore, he returned now. He returned again to go through an incarnation period of cleansing in Egypt. Joseph knew all this. For him, it was all over with. But he knew that for the illusionary realm, there was a purpose. For whom was it a purpose? For him? No. It was a purpose that the illusion was that Joseph was in Egypt, and there would be a hunger, and that hunger would bring all of the peoples of the world into Egypt, including the Jew. Because the Jew then would become the slave and go through all that he had to go through. Joseph knew this from the beginning. What he was concerned with was, is that part of the show over with? He assumed that when he saw the three, he assumed that the Joseph who's in jail, he's watching the movie as it goes by. It's the end of the film. Joseph now is being taken out, Joseph 1, there's Joseph 2, there's Joseph 3, different movies that come out, right? He thought Joseph 1 was finished. Joseph 1 ends with his coming out of prison. Okay. No. He forgot there was another edition. There was Joseph 2 yet. After this incident, there had to be a Joseph 2 with 2 more years.
And Jacob was in on this too.
What's that?
He was in on this also.
Everybody was in on this. Everybody was in on this. They're all watching the movie. Can you imagine how thrilling it is to see your movie going across the screen and you're not even affected by it? Oh, a great feeling. It's a great feeling. Try to experience it sometimes. But
I just did for a minute before. I was in a lot of pain. And you said, go up. Look, that I did.
Go out.
Pain's gone.
All right.
So it does work.
In any event, the Sarah Mashkim didn't remember, meaning because there was this aspect of shikha, this illusion, not that he didn't want to remember. Was he really a bad person? Do we have to think that he was like in Pashat Zachor? Do you remember when God says twice to the Jew, remember, al tishkach, do not forget. And the Zohar raises the question, you see, but there it's totally true. There the Jew doesn't need forces to make him forget. He loves to forget good that's done for him, like the Exodus Jew, and he loves to remember those people who have always harmed him. The nature of the Jew. Therefore, the Zohar says, the Jew is reminded twice, Zachor, al tishkach, and still, with all of this prodding, he still forgets, right? That's what happens with the wine steward. That was not the case. Here we are learning simply that the movie the movie of remembering, meaning the manifestation of Joseph now coming out and emerging from this prison, didn't arrive yet. Why didn't it arrive yet? Why didn't he remind? Why didn't he remember what Joseph had done for him? Because the force of forgetfulness, the force that is floating here and around us all day and all night, prevented the wine steward from revealing this dream that he had, that David interpreted, because it would have meant out. It would have meant that he could now go out, because Pharaoh would be impressed, and the illusion would be condensed in time. Not for that realm of the physical reality. The show must be played out. Therefore, it's not a question of repeating. It's telling us, says the Zohar, why didn't he remember? Because there is a force called shikha. There is an illusionary force known as Miketz that prevents us at different times from remembering or accessing into a computer that we could not or would not make mistakes. And when we raised another question about Yamim, that indicates to us already the whole idea, says the Zohar. You remember we asked, it says, Vahi Miketz Shenatayim, and let's see how they translate it into English. And it came to pass, in Miketz, chapter 41, first verse, and it came to pass at the end of 2 full years, a corruption. Where is the translation of the word Yamim? Yamim means days. Vahi Miketz Shenatayim means, and it came to pass at the end of 2 years. But where is the word Yamim? Totally overlooked. Why is it overlooked? Because it makes no sense. There's no reason for the Torah to inject the word Yamim. But again, if we can treat the Torah as a cosmic code,
What does it say in the Torah?
Vahi Miketz Shenatayim Yamim, or it should say Vahi Miketz Shnei Shanim or Shenatayim. That would have been sufficient. If all the verse meant to indicate here is 2 years. So the Zohar, again, extracts from this word Yamim another secret that we can use in our daily life. And that is, when you have a tziruf shalem shel tikun, meaning, as we discussed in the 2 Magen Davids, remember the upper triad and the lower triad, if in the process of anything that we do, both in the actual, the lower triad, and both in the potential, if we constantly inject the force of Zechira, which means the central column, then we are assured, in other words, Yamim, there has to be the central column of the upper triad and the central column of the lower triad. How do we have that kind of situation? Again, briefly stated, the upper triad, to give an example so it's fully understood, suddenly a thought comes in to open up a new business or to build a building, which is far simpler. To build a building, that was the first idea. This would be a good idea. An idea comes to me. Now, the idea has to become manifest in my mind. To build a building, it can be any type of building, any infinite numbers of ideas concerning a building. So then what do? I then say no. An apartment building, an office building, a store, or other types, or whatever, combinations. But now I have localized, I have reduced the idea. Remember, in every reduction there's a price, because the idea could have contained what kind of building? And that's the force of the Lord. The idea is great. All ideas are great, incidentally. But not all ideas become great. Where has it been lost? Because the moment the idea of building a building becomes actualized, even in the mind, I have already placed a limitation. Because if I've said I'll build an apartment building, or if I say I'm going to build an office building, I am already removing from that realm, that all-inclusive realm called building, I have now limited the original idea of building a building. I have created and injected what? Limitation. I have taken it out of the realm of idea, of building a building, and now have concentrated it on one kind of a building. The moment my mind has done that, I have reduced the idea with all of its potency, with all of its power. I have now subjected it to a small, infinite role.
Finite.
What's that?
Finite.
To a finite idea, where this could have been infinite, now it's finite. Now maybe I should have chosen at the end, I'll find out, right? Which was the right idea. If I lose, if it goes busted, it was a bad idea. Wrong. If I make it, it was a good idea. Wrong. The idea never changed. It included everything. So what makes a good idea a bad idea? When you inject, says the Zohar, that central column idea, when you say, all in the mind, all in the mind, why am I putting up that building? Is it for me alone? I would not do it. But by virtue of putting up this building, in addition to my benefit, there is also a benefit for others. That's the reason I'm going to do it. That is called the central column energy force. When you inject that kind of energy, into any idea, there is never failure at this point. At this point.
Raf, Yamim is also a mirror image. Yam.
What's that?
Yamim is also a mirror image. Yam for the upper triad.
Okay. All right, you get it. It's good. Okay.
You have also Arab.
Okay.
He was Sfirat Yesod.
Right.
So we have learned that Yom is also a Sfirat.
That is what the Zohar is going to say.
So you have two Sfirot.
He's going to
That's
say
how you reach Tiferet.
the two Sfirot are going to be Tiferet and Yesod. The two forces that make things become reality. That's exactly what he answered. What?
Tiferet and Yesod or Yesod?
No, Yesod and Yesod and no. Okay, now we've taken the actual. All right. So now that I've injected that central column energy force in my mind, I have not contained the idea. I have actually broadened the idea that it now will become manifested correctly, because I injected the idea into this idea that it is not for me alone. Now we have completed the thinking energy, the thinking consciousness that must go into every single idea of our life. If you want to ensure success, and I mean success meaning it is worthwhile not only in terms of money, but in terms of no aggravation. You know, you can make money and then pay for it in hell. But we're talking now of a total inclusiveness of what is good for us, not limiting it to one aspect or another, but the totality of beneficence that comes when you connect with the force.
Haraf, could you do it for something that is already in progress? In other words, an idea that has been planted, seeded.
You know what we learn in Kabbalah? It's easier to make an operation on the seed than on the tree. It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to do genetic engineering than when the child has already been born with a abnormal or an abnormality or a deformity. A lot easier. Whether things can be changed, Kabbalah deals with that too. But what we're dealing now with is getting to the before things become manifest in the wrong way. Because once he's made a decision to build this kind of a building, and he did not inject that central column energy, then however it turns out, even though it may turn out in his very minute, finite mind that this was a success, it may have brought who knows what else in the way of liabilities. We are discussing how we can have an overall and all-inclusive beneficence out of whatever idea we have in which we want to make it manifest. So we have now all of this established in the mind. But that is not going to produce a building, the fact that I have established it in my mind. The next step will be to take that idea and make it actual. The first step, the first procedure in making something actual would be to take an architect and now put it down on paper. And now it becomes actualized, where in my mind, I have a total visualization of what I want to build, but nobody else can build that building because in my mind I see the building, even with my description. And so I describe that entire visual perception to an architect. Now he puts it down on paper. And now it's ready to go. Then that paper could mean anything. But then we begin to localize it, because the paper that this building is on could be on 47th Street, it could be on 57th Street, it could be in any number of places. Again, even in this aspect of the drawing boards, remember that it is infinite insofar as once it's going to become localized in a certain area. Maybe a good building was placed in the wrong location. It's a possibility. Now, how do you know? Now we're talking about the actualization. How do you know that you can be certain that it's going to work out? Because if you go to the wrong location, it may not be rented. An infinite amount of problems can arise by that decision of placing it now in a particular area. Comes along now the second restriction that must be injected. The second restriction, which makes the actual become actual, and that is yesod. There's another restriction you go through. You say, now that I'm going to put up this building, these plans of a building in this location, and it's going to be do this, that, and the other. But why? Why is it? Is it just for me? Or I will share with others, maybe the proceeds, maybe in the form of tzedakah, or I shall locate an institution or whatever. But within this concept, there is not me alone. Then you have injected now another stage of restriction, referred to by the code name of Yesod. And when these two, the first one of restriction, which is Teferet, and the second one, which is Yesod, become manifested, these two become manifested, then success is there. Then you emerge from any problems that you think might have arisen. You have ensured the removal of any of this uncertainty, this illusionary doubts that could arise. Therefore, says the Zohar, Vayhi Miketz shenatayim yamim, it's not talking about years. It's not even talking about years. He's telling you that when these two emerge, the two triads emerge with their two central columns, then there is no question that the time has come for success. The time has come that he will leave the prison, because the second aspect has been merged. And then we have the story of Pharaoh, how he was removed from the prison, and so forth and so on.
So, the two yamim, what are they?
Sfirot.
Yeah, no, the Sfirot.
That's right. Tiferet, Tiferet is the central column of the upper triad, right? Chesed, Gvur, and Tiferet. And then Netzachot, Yesod. Yesod is the second one. That's when he would come into play. He thought that he had already come into play before, but it wasn't there yet. The cosmos did not come together yet to create the situation. In other words, Jacob is watching the film, and he saw he saw a 3 column. He saw 3 clusters of grapes. 3 clusters of grapes, he assumed, was the actual triad, the lower triad. If it's the lower triad, now he's ready for manifestation. Now the purpose of him coming to Egypt is going to become revealed. What is the revelation? That he would become king. He would be able to translate and interpret Pharaoh's dream. There would be abundance, and everybody, and the Jews would finally and ultimately wind up as slaves in Egypt. That was the purpose of him emerging from prison to become the king, second to the king. And then he would be instrumental in having Jacob, all of the sons and the family, come into Egypt. When is the time for that cosmic event to take place? Because as I said before, we think we're in control. We think we make manifest destiny. No. We can only make manifest cassettes. Which one we can choose, yes. But once we have chosen a particular program, there is nothing, almost nothing, I won't say nothing, there is almost nothing that the average individual can do to alter that cassette in midstream. The only time we can change from one program to another, from a better program to an even better one, is only by virtue of the Magen David, by this process of the 2 restrictions. That Joseph would emerge from the prison, he knew he would emerge. But there was a cosmic time schedule. When would that happen? It had nothing to do with anybody. Nothing to do with him. If he was doing what he had to do, it was going to happen. There is only one thing that all of us can ever do in our lives, is restriction. That is the only aspect of free will, is restriction. All of the other aspects, we think that we're motivating, we think we're running things all around us, we're running the environment, we control the environment. From a Kabbalistic point of view, the only aspect that you can include as a point of free will is the aspect of restriction. At that point of restriction, you can then say, I've changed my cassette. But once you have changed your cassette, your program, whatever that program is, you have no say over it. It moves you. It's like, for a tzaddik, he's very happy with it. He's maintained on a beautiful cassette. Who wants to change things? He's being maintained. For others, they are being maintained in the illusionary physical reality, which is the ups and downs. The only way to remove oneself from that reality is by moving into an upper realm. When these 2 sfirot come into play. We began with raising the question. Now there was one other question, which now is seems to have disappeared, and that was, the Zohar says, and Rashi says that too, Yosef haya etze batzvut ruach basvat lev, machmet shehaya asur shama. He was depressed until the time when it says, Vaiditzeu. They removed him. They brought him out from the dungeon.
Does that mean depressed or just down? Forward.
Okay.
That's not what I mean to say.
Right. That's right. The depression that comes to people is actually a result of being moved down into the world of illusion, in the illusionary reality world. So, depressed, the consequence of being thrust into a physical illusionary reality world brings depression. But depression is not by and within itself a cause. It is rather an effect. We bring on that depression. By removing ourselves, once you remove yourselves from that reality level of consciousness, which we have to battle each day with our tefillot, with the meditations that we have learned through Kabbalah. It's to at least keep us, our head a little above water. See, because below water is the physical illusionary world where nobody sees anything. Completely overwhelmed, completely surrounded by what we think are insurmountable conditions and positions. Now here it says that he was depressed. And we ask, could Joseph be depressed?
Contradiction, no?
It's a contradiction. He is a tzaddik. He is in that realm that he never becomes depressed. Right? And Yaakov was depressed.
It's a form of Zeonpin, being diluted to a point of no air, which is depressed. It's reaching a point, a very tiny point of light. Depressed, a point of almost before impact.
Atzvut. Now, Atzvut comes, actually, we discussed that in the morning. I'm not sure. No, we could discuss that on the Shabbat. What is the word etzev? What does the word etzev mean? What? No? Does it mean nerve? No? Means a nerve. How does nerve, if you know a little Hebrew, how does nerve come to being depressed? The word is atzvut, depressed. What does that have to do with nerve? I cannot say someone is nervous. Someone who's nervous is not necessarily depressed, neither is someone who is depressed necessarily nervous. On the contrary.
Breakdown.
What's that?
Breakdown.
That's right.
That's right.
Our central nervous system.
Okay. Of the central nervous system. It's more closely, in other words, again, atzvut. We have taken the word atzvut, depression, as it is commonly used, as the cause, rather than it's the result of what? When there is an imbalance in the central nervous system. Central. Now, why do they say central? I don't know. But maybe somebody upstairs is telling them to use the word central. Okay?
What you say in the lulav is the spine, it's yesod?
That's right. It's the central part.
Yeah, it's the spine. We call it the spine.
That's right. That's right. Now, he was there. Do you remember? And when he was looking at the movie, don't you cry sometimes in a movie? What are you crying? Come on. I know there's this wonderful, beautiful actor, and he's having troubles now. If you saw Gone with the Wind when I was a little kid, because I was incarnated in the South as one of those Fardim that now have their beautiful graves as a visiting site. That's all that's left of the community, right? Grave sites. Wherever you want to find Fardim, go to the graves. So that's where I was, and of course I never realized, whenever I saw Gone with the Wind, how depressed I was. What are you getting depressed about? First of all, it's all over with, right? It's not happening today. Why should one be affected? So, and then who's playing the part, Clark Gable, and it's depressing, right? They're burning down the city. So burning down the city, why should that be depressing? But it is depressing. And we start to cry sometimes. We see movies. Don't we ask ourselves, why are we crying? It's only a movie. It's only a movie. But where we get moved? That's why it's called movie, right? Okay?
We identify with it.
What? We identify with it. That's right. Well, how do you identify with it? This is not your life.
Maybe
you know that
maybe in a certain aspect.
Where you are affected, it is your life. In other words, you have your life, and yet there is another part to you that is also your life, and you're not even aware of, maybe. And when you cry, because not everybody cries at Gone with the Wind, not everybody cries, let's cry at this movie, or other conditions. Not everybody cries at the same time, right? Some laugh at the same thing, and some cry at the same thing. So you can't say that, it's just a movie. But because we identify with another aspect of ourselves, which is not in reality. But the truth of the matter is, that is reality. And why, for any logical reason, would we be crying, is because we identify with that we were there in that situation. or that we are there in that situation. We are there. While on the surface it doesn't appear so, but that we are there. When he saw himself still in prison, he realized that the cosmic structure of the two triads did not become a reality. He felt bad. Not that he felt bad, meaning he was depressed. But it's like when we see a movie. Do you become depressed? You see a movie? When you walk out, you say, I cried, I felt bad. But is my life being affected by that movie? Let's face it. Are we affected? For a moment. For a moment to capture. We identify with that. That's what it means here. He saw that the time did not come. It was being stretched out. Whereas if the cosmos had dictated he was taken out of prison, the process would begin already. He would become the second in command, and whatever happened afterwards. He was looking at things moving in slow motion. Maybe it was a slow motion movie he was looking at. That's a possibility. And he saw the slow motion, and that bothered him. Meaning, let it come to a head. Let it come to a head, rather than suffer the pain and agony of a drawn-out affair. That's what he was. He was concerned because the central column still did not come into play. All right, that takes care of that. Now, I also mentioned at the beginning that this weekly portion of Miketz, which has so much more of a mystery to it, but really, if you look into whatever happened here, with the dream of Pharaoh, the 7 cows. Oh, this is all in chapter 41. He first saw 7 beautiful, healthy cows, and then he saw 7 lean cows, and the lean cows devoured the healthy cows, and that's the end of the dream. But when he repeats it, he says, they devoured them, and they remained as unsatiated as lean cows, right? So we know what that means. He explains it, that the lean years, the good years, the 7 cows that were healthy and looked full were the 7 years that would have abundance. And then the 7 lean cows would have that idea of hunger, starvation, no food. This is the way he interpreted, and therefore he told Pharaoh, let's prepare ourselves for the lean years, and let's ingather so that we'd have enough food for those 7 years. But when Pharaoh repeats the dream, he adds something that he did not see in his dream. And let me quote for you. It says here, and behold, seven well-favored and fat-fleshed, and they fed and reed grass, and 7 others came up after them, ill-favored, lean-fleshed. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed ate up the 7 well-fed, favored, and that's the end of the dream. Here, and that is in verse 4. Now of chapter 41. Now in verse 20 of chapter 41, it says the same thing, but he then completes. It says, and when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. So I woke. Here he didn't see that. Or the verse does not describe the dream of Pharaoh as you couldn't tell anymore that they had eaten, that they should have been better bred, looked better. No. When he tells it to Joseph, he adds, you couldn't even tell that they had eaten anything. They remained in that exact condition as if they had never eaten at all. He adds this to Joseph. I mentioned that this parsha always comes out during Hanukkah. Now, just as we have learned that the cosmos dictate cosmic events. It is not the events as we see them, like Hanukkah, that we celebrated as a form of tradition, Purim as a form of tradition because the Jews were saved in both instances, but rather, when we are participating in this holiday, we light the candles not because the Jews were victorious, not because they found a vial of oil, not because of the miracle that the oil lasted 8 days. That doesn't interest us. Those are only the code preparations for understanding what the cosmos were about and how we can tap that kind of energy that appears in this particular period. We are not concerned. Tradition, as we know from a Kabbalistic point of view, has no presence in any of the holidays described in the Torah. When did these two significant holidays that are not mentioned or are not revealed openly in the Torah is Hanukkah and Purim? Now, from what we have learned, we will understand why Miketz, from a cosmic point of view, indicates exactly what Hanukkah and what Purim is about in relation to what we discussed this evening. If you know the calendar, it begins from Rosh Hashanah, not the calendar, but this section of 6 months, meaning from Tishrei, from Rosh Hashanah, you have 3 months, which are Tishrei, Cheshvan, and Kislev, or Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the 3rd month of this cosmic section of the year. Sagittarius is the 3rd month. What does that indicate to us? Immediately, central column. You then go on to the next group of 3, which is Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. Pisces, again, is the 3rd month. Now, is it any coincidence that Purim and Hanukkah happened in these 2 central column months? The answer is, of course not. It was not by chance. The cosmos dictated it. And the structure of the holidays are indicated in exactly what we discussed this evening. Maybe you don't see immediately the connection, but there it is. What happened on Hanukkah? What happened on Hanukkah? We read of a story that didn't affect any Jews at all. Didn't affect the Jews. Yeah, this fellow Antiochus, what did he want? Look, bow down to an idol, bow down to bring the pig for a sacrifice. But he never threatened the Jews with extermination. Never. Never.
Be with them. You see that name? What did he do so on that? Wat is toch niet aan het gaan? Dat is een schwestloze verhaal. Dat is wel gedaan. Een schwestloze damp dat we weer in Europa is ja. Ja, nee, maar dat zou ik niet doen. Dat wordt met sla in de band. Dat wordt met nou weer al van de schwestloze verhaal.
You hear the other side?
Yes, it's on now? Okay. Oh, I thought I could have relieved myself and just let me listen to the program. No? Okay. No luck. All right. Okay. We see a holiday that has a completely mystical attitude attached to this holiday. Lighting of candles. The people were not involved. In fact, it was the high priest. Why is that? Because in the cosmos, the 3rd month of this 6th group, which again means the Magen David, deals with the upper triad. It does not come down to the nitty-gritty. It's all in a potential state. All in a potential state. In fact, we know that Purim, in a chronological order, preceded Hanukkah, the event of Hanukkah. And yet, from a cosmic level, it is not correct. If Sagittarius came first, and it did come first, it preceded Pisces, that means whatever happened and whatever was structured within Sagittarius happened before, right? Before whatever happened in Pisces. And yet, here it came out that the holidays, the success of the Jews in both cases, one precedes the other. Purim, which preceded Hanukkah, comes after Hanukkah. To indicate to us that the potential state will always precede the actual state, as we discussed today in Miketz. This is the way the cosmos operates. You can't change that order. What we find in Hanukkah is things done in a very potential state. But that doesn't mean with that we can reap success or we can be free and etc. No. It requires the second state that injects, in other words, the Sfirat Yesod, or in this case Pisces, of which Joseph rules over. That case was the actual case. So, when we see the people involved in the holiday, that refers to where? Purim. There was the action that was developed by the people. Insofar as Hanukkah is concerned, we know there was a star of the show called Matityahu, the high priest. He, as in fact the Ari says very clearly, he prepared the whole holiday for the Jews at that time. He prepared, what does it mean he prepared? He revealed at that point the effect, the power of Sagittarius, which is the level of Bina. I don't want to go through the study of Chanukah at this point, but he made manifest. He was a chariot in a sense. He reproduced the event that was destined from the time of Genesis. Chanukah was created when Sagittarius was created, and it was in a potential form. Therefore, Hanukkah is not referred to as the holiday of Mashiach. Hanukkah is not referred to as the Hanukkah. To your disappointment? No. Because what? Because he's Sagittarius. Maybe he wants,
Because Purim is it's the only holiday we celebrate in the time of Mashiach.
That's right. It is the only holiday, meaning why is it the only holiday? Because it means the culmination. You see, because in the upper triad, you can still have the problem of shikha. You can still have the problem of it never becoming manifest. While Hanukkah became manifest, it was no guarantee that the Jew would do the job during Purim. Fortunately, it did become manifest. The aspect of Mashiach is here. It is only here for those who recognize the Zoharic interpretation of what Purim is about. The only ones who understand it, I think, are the Persians, even though they don't study Kabbalah. But they understand Mashiach already came, therefore what do you need mitzvot? What do you need anything? They're a little ahead of their time. You talk to Persians about religion, nothing, no more mitzvot, no tzedakah, no tefillin, no nothing really. Not necessary. Not necessary. Maybe they're right, I don't know, maybe.
Just the direct connection.
What?
Just the direct connection. So Purim is even though it happened first in history, it's really the actual state as opposed to the potential, because that's the final point, which of the Magen David, because that is Yesod. Therefore, Joseph, who is the chariot for Pisces? Who is the chariot for Pisces? Joseph. He is the one that makes things, ideas, become
actual, come into fruition.
Isn't it also that Chanukah is water? It's fire.
What?
Just Kislev. And Pisces is water.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Although, the Pisces are those who like things to be very comfortable. And they're right. They actually are right, the Pisces. They don't like too much movement and action. They're right. Because what is water? Chesed. It's the ultimate already when things are calm and Mashiach is here already. So now you know why Pisces are not movers unless they really, rise above it.
The Hanukkah is on the lower triad, and the Purim is in the higher.
No, the opposite.
No, I know this is what you explained.
But we might misinterpret that fact because because Purim preceded. So wouldn't you say that is on an upper level, right?
Way of, because the Joseph was connected to not the Joseph. The Hanukkah is connected to Yesod.
No, to Hod,
which is Lord
higher. Hod, remember, was Aaron, the high priest, who became what? Chesed.
Hod? I thought it was the
no.
Chesed, Hod, Yesod.
You had Netzach, Hod, and Yesod.
Which is lower.
Lower triad.
Lower.
Chesed, Hod, Yesod.
But Yesod is lower than Hod.
Right.
It's like
and this is what the Zohar says. That if you study conventional astrology, you're really mixed up, because all of the factors don't seem to fit the picture. Hanukkah being of the upper triad, yet it happened later. But this is the significance. From Genesis on, Hanukkah represented the upper triad. Therefore, there was very little action, and in fact, very little participation on the part of the people who are in the realm of Malchut. Along comes Purim, and there you have the participation of the people, meaning, unfortunately, from both sides, the act of exterminating the people, and the act of Geula from the point of view of the people who initiated. The Malchut rose to the Yesod, whereas Hanukkah was the kind of the preparation. Even though in time, space, and motion, when did Hanukkah come? Afterwards, right? But that's in the illusionary aspect of time, space, and motion. Therefore, there is a rule in the Talmud, Ein mugdam umucha b'Torah. There is no first, second, and third, no chronological order. This used to bother me to no end. What do you mean there's no chronological order in the Torah? Doesn't the Torah discuss a chronological history here of the Jews? It says, Ein mugdam umucha b'Torah. Oh, you can find something mentioned later on that really belongs before. How do you understand that? Because there are two realms. The confusing realm is the realm of the illusionary reality. There things seem to come first, and things like we do sometimes, we're ahead of our time, and sometimes we do things before. We act out something that should have first been thought about. I mean, we also confuse our thinking process. That's only in an illusionary word. The Torah deals with an illusionary word. But on another level, the cosmic level, what came first? Hanukkah came first. What came first? The potential. The reality realm that is known as the real reality realm always precedes. Therefore, Hanukkah is first. Even though in this chronological order of history, it seems that history dictates that it followed. So how could it be before? But it's not God. Yes, Chaya.
Could there be a connection? We have Yosef, who is Yesod, that was born. Moshe and Aharon were born later.
Yes.
Yes. That also. That's why. That's the difference between the Ashkenazim and the Sfardim on Sukkot. The Ashkenazim say that the sequence of events of Sukkot is Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, and it must be Yosef, Moshe, Aaron. And what a terrible mistake they're making. Even they count Sfirah. They count Sfirah. They should have changed the whole system in the Sfirah, because in the Sfirah it's Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. So what happens on Sukkot? There's another system for Sfirot. All right, that's the contradiction.
If I can go back to Shikha, before the Rab was mentioning that the magician creates an illusion where the Empire State Building disappeared, or the
Statue of Liberty.
But what he did was to create within everybody, to bring about that power of Shikha.
That is correct.
And that brings like a blank within everybody.
Right.
So how come we still see other things, or these people saw other things? Meaning he just brought it towards the liberty, the Statue of Liberty.
For a moment he can create an illusion.
Yes, but if it's an illusion, that means I won't be able to see anything.
No,
not just liberty, the Statue of Liberty.
No. There are, that's according to the Zohar, there are infinite forces of Shikha. There is a force, and I can forget where the string is. And remember, the package is here. There is not a total blank out. There is that force that blanks out whatever it wants to blank out.
Most of us are blanking.
Therefore, it's in control. For whatever reason, there should be a blank out.
True. We see 5%. The 95 is blank and all.
Okay? Yes, Shema.
Hadam Yesod was Manifest's first for Nesach and Hod.
Yeah, what?
Hadam Yesod,
You mean, no, Yosef was born before.
Yesod.
But not the Sphira in Genesis 1, that's where the real reality came into existence. What came first? Netzach, Hod, and then Yesod.
So why wasn't
But in this illusionary world, it gets mixed up, like the eye. You know how we see? First we see it upside down, and then it works itself out.
In the upper three, it's in perfect order. Yaakov, Abraham, Yaakov, and the other ones, it's already in the illusionary world, so it can be
twisted into a mirror. Yes. One final question, and I don't know if we could get.
Which Yosef is the one that makes the restriction? The one in the movie, or the one that watches it?
The one that watches it. The one in the movie does not make it. Because the one in the movie is not real.
That's right.
Movies are not real.
But
they look like they're real.
Was he doing it in a metaphysical, the restriction he did in a metaphysical way?
No, that part of Yosef, remember we said there's two parts to Yosef.
Right.
There's the metaphysical part and the illusionary part. The illusionary part is part of the movie.
But maybe if he made the restriction in the first place and didn't tell his brothers about the dream, then they may not have had God.
That's a good observation. Good observation. Maybe. Karen says that.
Maybe Yosef had made the restriction, right? In other words, he had to tell his brothers that he dreamt that they're going to bow to him and he's going to be a great man. Had he not told them his dream, restricted himself, maybe the whole Geula wouldn't have had to happen.
Maybe the sequence of events as they took place
they
may not have to happen.
But they were looking for Tikkun, so they
were
had
looking
to set up.
But we know that Tikkun can take itself.
Why couldn't he have gone down to...
Right, it didn't have to take 210 years. It could have taken 3 months, 2 days.
And besides, couldn't he have sent him all the food to
But they were not all the
souls.
But not all the souls that had to do that were present.
Oh, but he could speed up the process and make them all. That's what the Persians wanted to do in Persia. They wanted to bring down all the souls as quickly as possible, but that couldn't happen.
The Jews in Egypt, the women were giving birth to 5 and 6 and 7 children.
That was the reason, to speed up the process. That's right.
So they did.
But Karen is saying maybe if Joseph had restricted and not mentioned to them the dreams that he instigated them by revealing the dreams that they would ultimately bow down to him and so forth and so on. Had he restricted and not revealed that, maybe he would have speeded up the process.